with you about the US election in Taiwan. So we all know the keyword of the US election or the Trump administration is uncertainty. So because it's very difficult to predict his policies. And also in the first Trump administration, we see a lot of uncertain or sometimes contradictory policies. And we can predict that we will see some of these kind of policies later. However, I do see some certainty of the rise of Trump or Trump-style politicians all over the world. That is, I categorize two main factors that is causing the rise of Mr. Trump. So the first one is globalization. So we see that under the globalization, there is a lot of reshuffle of the supply chain, and especially from advanced economy to the developing countries in order to seek for a cheaper labor costs and other costs. And then there's a lot of unemployment issues and also inequality issues that cause a lot of dissatisfaction on the whole system. And also, the whole system, the political elites, and the traditional left-leaning or the pro-labor parties like Democrats, they began to maybe shift their policies toward the capitalists, and then the laborers will think that okay, they are just forgotten by the world. And then here comes Mr. Trump or many similar politicians who always shows their passions of listening to these kind of voters. If you see Mr. Trump in every campaigns, every time, he always again and again reiterate that, oh, I understand you. Okay, I understand you. I understand what you want. I understand what you are thinking. And I think this is this is one of the main characters that makes Mr. Trump so popular in the areas that hit the most seriously by the globalization. So that is first, globalization. And the second wave that causes the rise of Mr. Trump is identity politics. So basically we see the promotion of the human rights, democracy, and other minority issues will causing some of the pushbacks from the conservatives. So for example, we see if you stay in Taiwan in recent years, we see that there's a kind of 互加盟 or some other religious groups that they think that the promotion of the LGBTQ issues will endanger their ways of lives, and then they just gather together and to push back. So the second wave is this kind of identity politics. So the rise of Trump or some similar, politicians similar to Mr. Trump is not only in the U.S. but also we see far right politicians in Europe. No, not only in the U.S. but we see that the far right in the Europe, and also we can see like Han Kuo-yu and Ke Wen-je is also very populist style. So if you see, I think the rhetoric of Ke Wen-je is very, very similar to, as he's just a typical populist politician. That is, he always say that, okay, I understand you, and he is anti-LGBTQ, and all of the conservative languages on him and his parties. And so it's not unique. So, however, this rise of this kind of populist politicians will cause a lot of uncertainties later. So I would say that in the future, not only for Taiwan but also for the countries all over the world, will face a highly it's an end of era. So we will see a new era of Mr. Trump. Whether you like him or not, then he has a full control of the Congress. So yeah, he can do everything. I think almost everything he likes. So it's the end of the internationalist era. Will be a very, I would say a challenging time for the human rights or the democracies and the educators or researchers like me. So that is first. And then I would say that under the slogan of American First, American First is not the same with isolationist, but the effect or the outcome will be very similar. So American First is that in the past, America is, in my view, is it's the most, strong and also the most respected or the world leader of advanced democracies in terms of economy, in terms of military technology in almost every prospect. And then we see that American first is that the US is no longer want to maybe intervene or play the role of the global leader. Because the rhetoric is that the Americans should spend more resources or all the attention for the American-related issues only, not for, for example, in Europe, if you want to defend against the dictatorship, it's a Europe. The Europe should pay for their own, and for other regions it's the same. So American first is that, well, sometimes for other countries, especially the allies of the U.S., will see that the U.S. will be a retreat of the U.S. in the international politics, and especially in some multilateral or international organizations. That we already see this in the first Trump administration. And also for Mr. Trump, his worldview is not the same with the previous politicians. So for Mr. Trump, everything is transnational. So for him, there's no way as the ally or alliance, and there's no way as the American leadership. No, because everything is transactional. So he wants the allies of the U.S. to pay. And for him, everything can be put on the table for negotiation. So, well, that is the worldview of Mr. Trump. We should pay attention to. Again, no matter you like this or not, we should accommodate to this. We should maybe evaluate some of the potential outcomes. That is, the Americans are no longer talking about the so-called soft power. So soft power means that sometimes the countries will persuade others by their values, by their common shared interests, or and then when Mr. Trump saying that everything is transactional, there's maybe no soft power of the U.S. And this kind of shift will turn into, for example, some of the conspiracy theories. For example, in Taiwan. So that is what we call as U.S. skepticism. So, for example, in Taiwan in the past, there's always the opposition parties, the KMT and Minzongdang. They always say that, the U.S. will not help Taiwan. The U.S. is always not genuinely see Taiwan as a friend. So, U.S. will not see Taiwan as an ally. Then here comes Mr. Trump. It's just just happen to be the same. So Mr. Trump says that, you should pay. Okay, and the Taiwanese TSMC just stole American jobs. Then he just coincidentally saying a match is what is U.S. skepticism says. So I think the opposition parties in Taiwan will be very happy to see that. Well, they always very happy to see Mr. Trump's language about Taiwan recently because it's so negative. So yeah. So they can just now very happy to say, yeah, you see, Americans is not a genuine friend. They just want to make money from Taiwan. So now all the languages just come from Mr. Trump, sadly. So our organization, US-Taiwan-Watch, in the past few years, we write hundreds of articles to fight back against the US skepticism. However, now the language becomes the mainstream in the Trump administration. So that's also another fact that we should pay attention to. Another one is about the trade. So in the short term, or in the first Trump administration, Taiwan is actually beneficial. They see a lot of benefits from the Trump economy, especially for the tariffs on China. And because there's a reshuffle of the supply chain, and the U.S. starting to sanction a lot of Chinese companies, and then the Chinese companies, well, we see that there's a significant drop in the foreign direct investment in China, and then a lot of them just transfer to Taiwan and other East Asian countries because, well, you see a skyrocketing cost because of the tariffs, the sanctions, and also some domestic policies of China. So Taiwan is actually highly beneficial among with Vietnam and the other, I think Vietnam and Taiwan is the two most beneficial countries of the reshuffle of the supply chain. And also this time, we will see in the short term, again, in the short term, we will see Trump will have a lot of tax cuts and also deregulation of the high-tech industry. And in the short term, we will see a growing economy, that is for sure. However, in the long run, we will see a lot of uncertainty as well, because it is maybe Mr. Trump will have some tariffs. In his own word, is a punishment tariffs on Taiwan's industry. Okay, that is also that is concerning. And also in the long run, there will, because of the deregulation and the tax cut, we will see an even higher income inequality. So an even higher income inequality will cause even more polarized American society, and also for a polarized society in other places, also in Taiwan. During the past few years, we see Taiwan's economy is very good because of our high-tech industry. However, for the average income for other industries, like the service industry and other industries, the income and level is stagnated. So there's a higher dissatisfaction for the government. So most of them become supporters of柯文哲. So you can replace柯文哲with other populist politicians all over the world in other places. Because of the deregulation and the development of AI and other advanced high-tech industries, there will be definitely more higher income inequality. And that will happen in the US and also in other places like Taiwan. So the government should pay attention to this. Well, I know that the government has some dilemma. So the government can just emphasize that, okay, so we have a very good economy, we have very beautiful numbers for the growth of economy and also our stock market. However, just remember that a lot of people cannot make money from this growing economy, and they will become more dissatisfied. And then in the next time, I mean, under this highly polarized society, then the party politics will become more chaotic. And that will happen in the US, definitely, because of the tax cut, because of the deregulation, and also because of the there will be a reshuffle of the government, right? Elon Musk will lead that. What is the department? Efficiency, what organization that will cut a lot of government organizations. And we see that happen in Europe. So in the last decades in Europe, because of the financial crisis, I mean, the EU and the Americans ask a lot of countries to cut off some of the government organizations. And then we will see more polarized and rising income inequality in the European countries. So I'm not, I will see some of the negative impact already in the next few years. So I will just stop here and I will just join the discussion next time. Next round.
Thank you, Fang Yu. So my name is Jasmine Lee, and I'm also the editor at US-Taiwan-Watch, and I'm also the analyst at Bauer Group Asia. Bauer Group Asia is a consulting firm based in DC, helping multinational corporations to operate in Taiwan. So in the last few weeks, I'm going to talk about what's the implication to Taiwan. In the past few weeks, my team and I have interviewed a lot of experts in Taiwan and the U.S. regarding the future for Taiwan under Trump administration. And we interviewed Michael Maza from 2049, Ryan Haas from Brookings, and also a few days ago we interviewed Ambassador Bolton, John Bolton, one of the former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. all of them say that one of the most important thing that Taiwan, the recommendation to Taiwan is that we need to increase our defense investment to our GDP. And now we're around like 2.45% to our GDP, and they are suggesting that at least we need to raise that to 3%. And then we asked a military expert in Taiwan, Jie Zhong from INDSR, and he also said, and he's actually pretty optimistic. He thinks it's going to, even though the opposition party might have might polls a little bit, but at the end he believes that we can still reach that 3% of our GDP. So that's the first thing, because Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, he's fascinated, and he is very sensitive to figures. So we need to show him that Taiwan, we need to show him that our investment, because the U.S. Defense spending is around like their 3% of their GDP. So if you wanted to show them we worth the help from U.S., the system from U.S., we need to show that we also contribute around the same. But maybe probably you can add later, because for export for a country, actually like GDP percentage to GDP is not a really good index, because our GDPs change every years. So it's not a really good index, but we have to do that because Trump is extremely fascinated with numbers. That's something we need to do. And the second thing, so raising out, and John Bolton, he also mentioned that in DC, there's still a group of people, and it's actually not small. They're still voicing DC, thinking that Taiwan is the free rider. So we need to resolve that. So that we need to continue to have people to talk about that. And also the other suggestions continually made by Ambassador Bolton is that you need people to constantly remind President Donald Trump that how important Taiwan is. And we need to have a person in his inner circle, like Senjo Abe. He used to go to do golfing with Donald Trump. We need to have this kind of person around him to tell him that how important Taiwan is. And then I started to ask him questions, and because basically what he mentioned, all the recommendation made by these experts, Taiwan has been doing. We have been raising our GDP, raising our investment to our defense. We have also training people, sending people to U.S. to build connections with the U.S. So I asked a question to Ambassador Bolton. I was saying that, what have we done right in his first term, and what can we do better? And actually, he couldn't give me a really good answer. And because Taiwan has been doing the right thing, we have been doing that. And we're still on the way. We're still for example, our investment is still 2.45 GDP, but that actually increased a lot in the past 8 years. Doubled, yeah. So we have been doing that. So there's nothing we've done wrong, just we're not doing good enough. And so I started to feel when I was processing all these interviews, I started to feel we are going to enter a era. I feel like Taiwan is in a woman situation. I will explain that later, because we're going to enter an era that with a toxic masculinity. And 2 months ago, I received a delegation from the U.S. and there's he's a very nice person. But he came to me and was like, Jasmine, let me tell you, I have a whole plan for Taiwan. I got everything sorted out. I know what Taiwan should do. I have a plan. And I was like, wow, after 3 days, the delegation, only the 3 days, it's a good investment. And then after 3 days, and then you have a plan for Taiwan. And I was like, wow. And I was like, of course, I was like, thank you for the plan. But I feel like Donald Trump and his team, including Elon Musk, they have this kind of let me help you with the problem and let me solve the problem for you. And if I find you that doesn't worth my help, then I'm not going to give you shit. So I'm really worried. That's something I'm really worried about. And when they are when President Donald Trump is trying to solve a problem, he usually neglects those smaller countries. For example, Abraham Accord. Abraham Accord, when he is making that deal, he doesn't really take into account of Palestinian people. And that's, to a certain degree, that leads to the future Hamas, the Israel and Hamas conflict. So that's something I'm really concerned about. And we need to make sure that we are when Trump is making a deal, we are on the negotiation table. But unfortunately, when I was interviewing Ambassador Bolton, he said that if there's a good price, he thinks Donald Trump's going to sell Taiwan. He thinks that's possible. I'm a little bit, I'm not like 100% agree with him, but just that's what he said. So why I just mentioned that I feel like Taiwan is in this women's situation because when I was processing these interviews, I wanted to share a monologue from the movie Barbie, and just just hear this and think about how similar is the situation with Taiwan. He said, and you can basically replace the words women with Taiwan. Okay. It's literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and you are so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you cannot ask for money because that's cracks. You have to be boss, but you cannot be me. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but you don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for others people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you pointed that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them to too much, or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that but always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never selfish, never fall down and never fail, and never show fear, never get out of line. And that's too hard. And I feel like it's a little bit like, I'm not sure this a little bit, but I feel like it's somewhat similar to the situation with Taiwan. We're never doing it right. And even though we're all on track, there are so many times when I'm talking to an expert in the U.S., they're actually saying that you're on the right track, keep going, but we're never doing that right. So what should we do? So I started to think about those female that I really admire, and I feel like one of the key is that you need to have confidence, and that's something I think it's our job to keep letting Taiwan to have this confidence, because Taiwan has have this kind of insecurity for a really long time. And Brian mentioned about U.S. skepticism. Before joining Bauer Group Asia, I was a researcher at Information Operation Research Group, IORG, and I was doing research on U.S. skepticism. And there's a lot of different types of U.S. skepticism. One type, for example, there's a chaotic narratives, basically saying that U.S. is creating chaos around the world, or for example, U.S. Or bad friend theory, basically saying that U.S. is a bad friend and China is a good friend. But there is one narrative that is mainly initiated from Taiwan. It's not initiated from China, which is abandonment theory, because Taiwan has been abandoned back in 1979. So we have this kind of insecurity, and so we're always thinking that U.S. is going to abandon us once again, and that's actually really effective in Taiwan. So I think it's really important for us, for US-Taiwan Watch, continue to directly, and one of, I think, Jake Sullivan, I would say he's one of the person did a really great job in countering U.S. skepticism. He when back in 2022, I think it's 2021, when U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, and there are so many U.S. skepticism and abandonment theories saying that U.S. is going to abandon Taiwan just like U.S. abandoned Afghanistan. And Jake Sullivan, he directly using, like 2 days after, he basically using the U.S. commitment to Israel to compare with the U.S. commitment to Taiwan. So after that, you will see the person that initiated abandonment theory is back then in Taiwan was Zhao Shaokang, one of the very famous, he's basically the top cause in Taiwan. Can I say that, right? Okay. So and then, but 2 days after, Jake Sullivan directly responded to that. He never said that. And then when Russia-Ukraine war happened, he was saying that we need to be extremely careful comparing Taiwan and Ukraine. So we need to work with, I think what we continue should do is that we're really grateful. Now the AIT director, Raymond Green, he's one of the best person that know Taiwan. So we need to work with him and the new AIT team to directly face those U.S. skepticism, especially during Trump's term. And I think Taiwan is extremely lucky to have Raymond Green right now when Trump is in the seat in White House. And then we also need to, what we should do is having the confidence and make friends with European friends. Because European countries, they have been having this kind of, starting from 2016, the first Trump's term, and especially after Russia-Ukraine war, they have been seeking this kind of 战略自主 strategic sovereignty. So I think that's something, and so it's really important to have Taiwan to make friends with European country directly without having U.S. helping us to build that ties. So I think that's what Taiwan has been doing right now. But we need to have more people. We need to have more talents. We need to have more Taiwanese people know how to speak their European language and really strengthen the ties with European countries. And the third thing I think we need to do is to continue to strengthen the tie with the congressmen and congresswomen within U.S. and making sure that we still have our friends in the legislative branch. And the fourth thing we need to do, I think there's still some opportunity during Trump's term. Because Trump is not a person that really follows traditional or like establishment way of doing things. So I think, for example, the phone call with Tsai Ing-wen back in 2016, even though there are some people saying that he regret with that, but at least he has no idea that that's a taboo. So that's how they put the name into his list. So I think that's something we can do. And also during his term, I think the major thing, even though we need to give the credit to Mr. Pompeo, the most important thing that contributes to the U.S.-China relation is lifting the internal restriction within the State Department. That is extremely important for U.S.-China relations. So it's really impossible to do it during Obama or other more establishment rulings. So I think we also can grab some opportunities or to seek some opportunity breakthroughs and making Taiwan to walk into a more normalization of a normal country status with U.S. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Jenny, it's your turn.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. I think it's good. Okay, you can start.
Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone. It's a real, I can hear myself, but it's a real pleasure to be here. My name's Jenny, and I'm also a member of US-Taiwan-Watch, so it's like a US-Taiwan-Watch kind of panel today. I was most recently a policy associate at FAPA, the Formosan Association for Public Affairs. And FAPA is a pro-Taiwan organization that does a lot of advocacy to Congress, located in DC. But right now, I'm pursuing my PhD at Boston College, where I'm continuing to focus on international relations. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you, Brian, for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, so I think like both Fangyu and Jasmine kind of chose some key words to kind of characterize the next Trump administration. So I think I'll do that too. So I think there are two key words that I've chosen. One is personalistic and second is contradiction. And I say personalistic because first of all, Trump has this time around, he has really tried to choose a handful of loyalists. If you've been following the slew of appointees in recent weeks. In the first term, I think a lot of like MAGA peoples would say that, Trump wasn't able to get everything he wanted because he had the wrong people in. And so we saw a lot of people who resigned, people that Trump kicked out. But this time around, he has really chosen people that really align with his views. And Jasmine mentioned, the next term might really just be about who can get Trump's ear. And I think in some ways that's very true. There's this Times article who talked about how Trump is actually someone who's very difficult to brief on national security matters. Because first of all, he thinks the intelligence agencies constitute a deep state. Second, when he's briefed, he kind of veers off on tangents. He has a very short attention span. He rarely reads intelligence reports, and instead really relies on conservative media, his television, or his friends for information. So according to this article, there's varying accounts. He often interrupts intelligence officers based on tips and gossip he gets from his friends. And at times when people try to correct him, he kind of dismisses them and they fall out of his favor. So I guess due to his personality and the people he has appointed, I would say that the second term is different from the first in terms of how personalistic it has become and his capture of the Republican Party. But in other ways, I think there's a lot of media attention around Elon Musk and his new Doge department. But first of all, just to remind everyone that this Department of Government Efficiency won't actually be a real department. It's kind of an outside organization. And one thing is that Trump has really chosen for Elon Musk, for example, he has a really strong character. And for me, I'm kind of skeptical of how long this Musk-Trump marriage will last. It seems to me that I don't know, at some point, my prediction is that they will clash. And that kind of goes to my second point, my second key term, which is contradiction. So in terms of foreign policy, for example, you can see that Musk has been very unfavorable to Taiwan, and he's actually kind of pro-China. I think more than half of his Tesla cars are actually manufactured in China. In 2022, he had a Tesla exhibition in Xinjiang, and at the time that was a really big scandal. He said that China should just take Taiwan. So those are his views, but you can argue that Musk isn't part of the foreign policy establishment, so these views and his interests don't really matter. But that really kind of contradicts with the people he's appointed and the kind of China policy that we are seeing from his agenda. So people like Mark Rubio, for example, or Mike Waltz, his national security advisor that he's appointed, they are real China hawks. And so you can see that kind of contradiction with the people he's appointed. And I think I also did like the nasty job of trying to read through Project 2025. And so like, while reading that, first of all, it was like very much word vomit. There's some phrases that I thought, oh my gosh, how can anyone who's even remotely serious write a sentence like this? Just to like give you an example, one of their like goals is to dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. And one reason they state for that is because unaccountable, and I quote, unaccountable federal spending is the secret lifeblood of the Great Awakening. So I don't know, when you read something like this, you're like, is this serious? But if we're focusing mainly on Taiwan foreign policy, you can see that the so-called Project 2025, which appears to be the kind of agenda that he wants to implement, it is very, very anti-China. It still sees, like, one of its criticisms of the Biden administration is that the Biden administration has a very muddled China strategy, and it is still very hawkish on the Chinese Communist Party, and in some ways still very, very pro-Taiwan. But I think one of the contradictions is that it is extremely hawkish on, like, China, Iran, Venezuela, and North Korea. But at the same time, while it purports to be very supportive of allies like Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, it also says that, one of the priorities of the Department of Defense is to increase allied conventional defense burden sharing, and which basically means, yes, we are very hawkish on these traditional adversaries, and we will support our traditional allies, but yes, allies should do their own share of things and they should support themselves. So I think essentially an America First strategy in some ways is still similar to what Biden is trying to pursue, the language peace through strength that you might see circulating as part of America First foreign policy is, Blinken uses that phrase as well. But in other ways, it's very contradictory that if you want to really pursue, really support your allies, you're also wanting them to just support themselves. And a key message from this 2025 agenda is to leave international organizations in order to serve American interests. And so in some ways, I guess if I had to make a prediction for Trump's foreign policy, it would be something that's in some ways very difficult to grasp, very hawkish on some issues, perhaps very, very vocal as he did in his first term, more so than Democrats, for example, but I don't think it would translate into something very concrete. So in the first Trump administration, for example, a lot of people in Taiwan like Trump because a lot of legislation was passed that is seen as pro-Taiwan. But I think some of these legislation, you could argue, is more about giving Taiwan a sense of sovereignty rather than providing Taiwan with real American support and real military or substantial benefit. So for example, I can't see Trump using what Biden has used, the presidential drawdown authority to provide Taiwan with arms. To him, that would be a very bad deal. So I think the next Trump term we will see a lot of anti-China rhetoric, but at the same time praising Xi Jinping because he loves having this attention and all these authoritarian kind of style of governance. at the same time not really giving any good deals to traditional allies. And so I think I'll stop here. I think I could go a little bit more into like the personnel, the people he's appointed, like people like Rubio or Mike Waltz, if anyone has any questions about that. But yeah, so I think in some ways, yeah, two things. It would be him being a little bit more personalistic, a little bit more authoritarian because he has these loyalists in place. But at the same time, very contradictory. His kind of conservative, like idealist agenda is really not in line with like the kind of foreign policy that America first seeks to accomplish. Yeah, so I'll stop here and see, like, if anyone has any questions about, you know, the details of the word salad, that is Project 2025, or like the appointees, like, feel free to ask.
Okay, so I think next I'll ask one or two questions and we can open up for Q&A. So my first question to everyone on the panel is, we talked a lot about the US, but what is Taiwan likely to do then? Because, for example, I think something we have seen is the emphasis on arms deals. For example, that Taiwan has approached the US with 21 billion in terms of arms deals, but also claiming not to have a specific shopping list. At the same time, the items that come up are purchasing an Aegis destroyer and also F-35s, big ticket items, flashy items. Perhaps Trump would like that because I think oftentimes when he talks about what he wants Taiwan to do in cursing defense budget, it's a floating number, 3%, 5% like Israel, 10%, which he actually did say, which nobody has said before, those kind of things. So I'm curious what people think Taiwan is likely to do to appeal to Trump. Yeah.
So I just want to add some point following the discussions. So just give you some numbers about the GDP percent and military spending of GDP percent. So during the Taiwan administration, in the past 8 years, we doubled the military spending, doubled from 300 billion to 600 billion NT dollars. So you see that during the Ma Ying-jeou administration, he just demilitarized Taiwan a lot. And then Taiwan just doubled the military spending. However, if you see this as a percentage of GDP, still 2.4. 2.4 is, well, relatively high because compared to NATO countries, the NATO countries, there are 32 NATO countries. Their average is 2%. So we have higher than the NATO average. And also, if we rank among NATO countries, we can rank to 5 or 6. We have already paid a lot of attention to the military issues, and then we are willing to defend ourselves. However, if you use the GDP as a indicator, some people still think that Taiwan is not doing enough. And also, GDP is not a good indicator because the tax. I mean, the amount of tax is very different in every country. So in Taiwan, the tax burden is among the lowest in the world. So we have very low government spending as a percent of GDP. So you have to see that. I think maybe the military spending as percent of our government spending is a better indicator. So we have already 30 or 35. I mean, 1/3 of our government spending is about military. So it's already very, very much. So if we raise the GDP, the military spending to 3% or 5%, then we will see a 60% of government spending in military. So it's impossible. Okay, it's impossible. So yeah. Another thing is that the contradictory. Just as Jenny mentioned, that the contradiction is about tariffs. So Mr. Trump he said that he once said that tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. I quote from Mr. Trump. And if you ask the economists or scholars, 99 out of 100 will tell you that tariffs is not very good. Because if you impose tariffs, then it will hurt the consumers domestically. And also, the U.S. is biggest and the main consumer of the world. So 4% of the population of the world consumes 25% of the goods in the world. So the US is the consumer, the main consumer of the world. So the US is, I mean, you see the economic power is very powerful. However, if you impose tariffs, then it will hurt yourself first. And also it will raise the inflation, which is, I mean, contradictory to the American first policy. So there will be some difficulties of imposing this huge amount of tariffs in other countries as well. So, and then Mr. Trump last time just blamed everything to the deep state. Because of deep state, we cannot use the tariff and we cannot have more foreign direct investment back to the US, something like that. And the deep state story is, well, last week I have another panel with about the US politics, and then a friend, just a participant, just tell the worldview of about the deep state, and I think it's magic because you can see that he can just connect everything. The American politicians, whoever from Republicans or Democrats, whoever oppose Trump is part of deep state, and then the deep state also connects to foreign leaders who just have some conspiracy of overturning Mr. Trump, and they will make Mr. Trump very difficult to implement his policies. And I just, wow, okay, it's a good story, but well. So my answer is that, well, I envy the US because in the US, every politician, no matter you don't like each other or not, and there will have been consistent foreign policies before. So everyone, no matter Republicans or Democrats, they can have common goals of achieving the national interests of the US. Not like in Taiwan, we see our opposition parties always think that their country, and I don't know what country in their mind. So, for example, our legislator from KMT say that our central government is in Beijing or something like that. It's Chen Yuzhen, do you know that? and also another legislator, Gao Jinsu-mei, he in the legislature, she said that, well, we Xi Jinping, something like that. 我们习近平, our Xi Jinping. Okay, so for her, Xi Jinping is, well, with her side. Okay, and well, we have this kind of opposition. And my answer in the panel is that I don't believe there is a deep state because I do believe in the U.S. Democratic system, and also the U.S. politicians. Well, although some of them we don't like them, but they will not selling, their national interests. They have a consistently recognize who is a friend, who is an enemy of the U.S. So I don't think there's a deep state. But this conspiracy theory does work. Does work. Okay.
Okay, so for what Taiwan should do, I think we can divide that into military and economic. So for military, I think one of the most urgent pressure Taiwan is facing right now is China's. They're using all kinds of strategy and tactic, this kind of gray zone tactic, right? So this is the only tools that Trump is going to counter that is tariff. So basically that is not enough because this kind of gray zone tactic, including like legal warfare, including this kind of like harassment on the sea, on your territory. So tariffs not enough to counter that. So what Taiwan should do, I think we definitely need to work with other allies, including Japan and Manila, Philippines, that they also face the same situations, and we need to continue to have this kind of talk with them by ourselves. That is really challenging because before we usually go through U.S. to talk with Tokyo and Manila, but now we need to find ways to directly talking to Japan and the Philippines. And for legal warfare, we also need to work with European countries. That's really what Taiwan should do. So I think that is really challenging for Taiwan, but we must do that. And And also I mentioned, so last year, the NDA National Authorization Act, from the US, there's a clause saying that the Secretary of Defense should provide a program for Taiwan to do a training program design a training program for Taiwan. That is extremely important because that is helping Taiwan and US and militarily really cooperating with each other and helping Taiwan to reform our military capacity. And according to the military expert that I interviewed, he said that now Taiwan is sending lots of people to US in California to do the training, and it's around like cents to the east. That would be like 3 billion. That would be like 3 billion every year. And basically now US, Biden administration, they are using a lot of different tools, including like the presidential appropriation rights and all other like tools to help Taiwan, basically providing that, like paying that for Taiwan. But if Trump knows that, he probably will ask Taiwan to pay for ourselves. And 3 billion is actually a huge amount of money. So Taiwan, either we need to find a way to pay for that program, or we need to take our people back to Taiwan to do the training back in Taiwan. But I think it's really, I think everybody knows the training in Taiwan, the quality is not that good comparing with it in US. And having this kind of first-hand training with the US and also helping Taiwan to better cooperate with the US military. So I think how to pay for that, that's something we need to figure that out, and I still don't have the answer yet. And for economic, I think first of all we need to let Mr. Trump understand that Taiwan is not a competitor of US. I think he probably still in that kind of 1980s mindset, thinking that Taiwan is like Japan, it's like Taiwan's like Japan stealing US jobs. Because back then, that's like Toyota is really a competitor of GM or Ford. Because once Toyota sell one cars, that means that GM is going to like reduce one cars, right? It won't be able to sell the one cars in the US. So, but Taiwan's not the case. Taiwan is the provider, chips provider of TSMC is the chip providers for Apple. So we are not competitor. We are how to say that, partners. So I think that's something we need to really let Mr. Trump understand. If you're hurting TSMC, you're also hurting Apples. You're also hurting Amazons. You're also hurting those major companies in the U.S. You need to like erase this kind of 1980s mindset from Donald Trump. So we need those inner people. Even as Jenny mentioned, he's extremely hard to be briefed. So we need to find a way, probably use some memes or I don't know, to let him understand a graph or something, to let him understand this different eras, different situation. And my concern is the 21st century trade agreement that probably will, I'm not sure it's going to stop, right?
I think it will stop.
It will stop because like Trump is a huge hater of globalizations and this kind of, even though he likes to do things in bilateral way. But this kind of mutual beneficial trade agreement, I don't think he's a fan of that. So that's the reason why in the past few months, like U.S. have been rushing, trying to finish the second phase of it. We failed to do that, I think I don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't, and I think Trump hasn't appointed his USTR head. Not yet. Some people are suggesting Lightenheiser. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe we can ask Jenny. But my sense is that is probably we need to find the 21st century agreement probably will stop for 4 years.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Fang Yu and Jasmine. I guess apart from like the 21st century trade agreement, I think another thing that would probably stall, which it already has, is the double taxation. if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would, for the next 4 years, anything that's seen as a bad trade deal, might not pass, even though, double taxation, I think that's an issue that would benefit both, the United States and Taiwan. So I think Fangyu and Jasmine have pretty much covered, the things that I would like to talk about. So I think I'll just add, 2 things. So Jasmine talked about, having deeper partnerships, with other countries, and I think that's really important. Even if Trump does pursue kind of another US-China trade war with Arab, I think Taiwan really should not, try and cruise on, windfall gains or anything. It's not stable. Instead, we really need to find other ways to build our own kind of hub and spoke partnership in the Indo-Pacific. After first Trump administration, Biden administration was really trying to rebuild partnerships in Asia, trying to build partnerships between South Korea and Japan, and we just rebuilding kind of this, what they call like a crystal network of, alliances in Asia. But I think, for sure in the second Trump administration, that will probably, go down the drain. And so Taiwan, I think, has, the government has like a responsibility to try and build that and maintain what has already been built, with traditional allies with Japan, maybe strengthening its relationship with Australia, South Korea, as well as Southeast Asia, for economics. That has traditionally been a little bit difficult, but it would be wise not to not to depend too much on the United States. But that, that's kind of just like what any country should do. You should never want to side with one country in hopes that it would get good favors from them. Even though the United States really is Taiwan's major and most important strategic partner. The second thing that I think Taiwan should think about, which is a little bit more abstract, and it's me coming from the Taiwanese American congressional advocacy, activist angle, which is rhetoric. So for the past 4 years, you would often see that Taiwanese officials, Bi Kim Hsiao, for example, often using democracy as one of the terms, one of the values that bind the United States and Taiwan, common values, human rights, and these very international values. But I think in the second Trump administration, it'll be a little bit more difficult to use these values, both to attract the United States and to convince others. If people see that, democracy in the United States is somewhat unstable, and you're saying that, we have common values in democracy, I think it's in some ways not super convincing. And so that's something to keep in mind, how, as Jasmine also mentioned, how should you approach the United States? And second, how should you convince the American people? There's been polls in the past where the American people are extremely supportive of the US-Taiwan partnership. A lot of people think that the United States should aid Taiwan in the event of conflict. But I think, with the popularity vote going to Trump, I don't know if, people in America care so much about Taiwan. And in the next administration, I guess there's two things. How should Taiwan get the American public on its side, not just, American officials, not just the Trump administration, but continue to let the American public know that Taiwan is an important partner of the United States, and supporting Taiwan is putting America first too. And the second is and this is mostly for Taiwanese Americans, how should we advocate for Taiwan when I think there would be a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment, and in the first Trump administration, Trump term, we saw a lot of API hate, anti-Chinese sentiment. So how can we advocate for Taiwan without seeing like we are anti-China and trying to sow greater divisions? So what kind of values should activists, Taiwanese Americans really use to both attract the American public and the Trump administration, people there who are real China hawks, and then also people who are just, normal people who really are starting to doubt, America's place in the world. And so, yeah, I think these are two things that Taiwanese Americans should really think about the next 4 years.
Okay, so I think we can do Q&A. So the way this will work is you hold that mic, and I'll use this mic to go around. Cool. Yeah, you first. Well, I think this will work.
All right. Thank you kindly for all your comments. I'm very interested with regard to what I feel seems to be out of frame. And what I feel seems to be out of frame is largely China and the alliances that China is building with countries that perhaps are not traditionally seen in the West, seen as such. I'm talking about Eastern Europe, I'm talking about countries like Kazakhstan, right? And my feeling is that while it is helpful to build alliances with Europe, and my suspicion is when you say Europe, you mean Western Europe, that I feel like that's useful. One move that Taiwan made that I find particularly useful for the relationship with the US is the relation to Somaliland. I think that's really good in building leverage, right? Because I feel that if you're going to talk to Trump, you're going to have to talk the language of power, and the language of power is the language of leverage. And so based on that, I would recommend for Taiwan to build alliances in Southeast Asia that probably also extend beyond what we know as maybe the nicer Southeast Asia, right? Like the Philippines, yeah, all right, but beyond that, talk to Vietnam, why not? Talk to also Japan, of course, but talk to the rest of Southeast Asia that are maybe not traditionally democratic allies, and so forth, right? This is a discussion that is happening in Europe as well. I'm European, and the Europeans are doing a very bad job at it, I feel, and giving a lot of leverage to right-wing parties because they're doing a bad job at it. That is my position. In that case, I wanted to ask you just quickly, what do you think China will do? Thank you.
We're going to talk a few questions. Next question? No questions? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. So I think this whole discussion, both on the U.S. side but also generally, it does bring up, I think, Carl Poyani does serve as, I think, a useful sort of metric or use of callback, or, you know, both on its discussion on bullion reserves, and tariffs, et cetera, but also on the theory of, you know, double, two-step reaction, et cetera. And my concern is with a lot of these discussions about military spending, you know, doubling or increasing it is, as you three have rightfully pointed out, that Taiwan does not spend that much money or invest that. State spending is actually remarkably small for the size of the economy on a per capita basis. And I think invariably, any increase in military spending, whether or not immediately or otherwise, will create a kind of pushback, considering that there are, I think, some pretty profound social problems in Taiwan that are not, I think, being addressed properly by the Taiwanese government. Particularly investment in housing is quite poor here. It's not the worst in the world, I mean, but, you know, it could be a lot better, right? Housing as a share of purchasing power per parity per capita is extremely high here. And so I see that as a potential pitfall of this discussion about increasing military spending, is that it can give, you know, America, skeptic or not, it's maybe irrelevant. If you can't afford rent, it doesn't really matter in the existential sense. Thank you.
Maybe we could take one more question. One more question of this round. Oh, back there. If you want to come up a bit, because of this, well, riding around this thing. Yeah.
All right, so towards the end of the Q&As, or the kind of introduction, you guys talked a bit about soft power coming from Taiwan. To me, as someone who's been in Taiwan for 6 months, I have noticed a kind of like, you know, lack of sort of media presence when it comes to culture that gets exported abroad from Taiwan. You know, South Korea and Japan have had a very successful strategy of exporting that. So I'm kind of just curious, you know, if you guys have any thoughts as to like what could be replicated from that, if that's even the kind of push you would say would be required to say, hey, not just reach, you know, American audiences, but also people across the world.
All right, do people want to respond? In whatever This is a bit of a...
Okay, so for the first question, what would thank you for the recommendation, and just adding something, I like a few years ago I went to Serbia, and I think that's why Taiwan is strengthening our tie with those democratic, like Western Europe countries, because considering the opportunity cost and our talents, lack of talents. So we don't really have that much of talents, and when we have like limited resource, we have to think of our, like, where should we invest, and how can we have the highest best result out of it. So that's the reason why we're like prioritizing Western Europe. So I think it's definitely very important that we should diversify and also like building ties, and definitely Vietnam, and and I think Taiwanese businessmen are very powerful in those countries. But you know, like this kind of like Taiwanese mindset, we always feel like 政治, like politics is politics and business is business. I think we need more people to start to make people to understand this. It's not a time, like this kind of like time is past. So I think that will take a little bit of time to do that. But I think that's a really good recommendations, and we have to. I think it's really important to train more talents in Taiwan. And also, what would China do? I think like the Trump's unpredictability to a certain degree can also create deterrence, because China doesn't know how Trump is going to react. But at the same time, I think China will continue to do this gray zone tactic, because this kind of legal warfare, this kind of harassment, Trump doesn't care. He only cares about money. He like the very something that he's a media person. He only like see those people. Things really appearing on the media. So I think those, this kind of legal warfare, he doesn't really care. So I think if I'm not a China expert, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that. But if I were China, I probably will do more this kind of human rights. I don't, you know, that's what Ambassador Bolton said. like every year in the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, White House will always issue a letter. But in 2019, Mr. Trump is like, no need to do that. So I think if I'm China, China would definitely take advantage of that. Yeah, and the second question is regarding the budget, and that's really hard to answer, and I'm actually still learning how to the budget allocation is basic. It's not about like it's actually very complicated. So maybe you can answer more on that question. And the third question is about the soft power. So my parents they are from entertainment industry. So there is so I would say before 2005, like the Taiwan is a hub, like a major entertainment hub in Asia. Like most of the popular singers are from Taiwan. Like Chinese speaking, Mandarin speaking songs are like the most popular artists are from Taiwan. But after 2008, a lot of people from the entertainment industry all went to China because they have bigger stage, they have bigger, more budget. And believe me, though, for entertainment, for artists, a lot of people they enjoy applause. They need to see a bigger stage. They need to see there's more audience. That's what they are seeking. So a lot of people went there. So I would say, especially like Wu Kangren, I think a very famous actress in Taiwan, and actor in Taiwan. He just mentioned that he's going to China, and that's really shocking. And basically because he really, really wants to have an experience, have this kind of experience to really work with the top actors and actresses in China. And this actually are very, very attractive to a lot of artists in Taiwan. So I think what we should do is to have more cooperations with other countries from Taiwan. So to allow those artists to be willing to stay in Taiwan, because we have a huge brain drain to China in the entertainment industry, and especially for the middle age, that middle age era, they go to China because they made this decision like 10 years ago. So they now have to continue to develop their career in China. So I think it's really important. I think in Netflix, I think it's a really, really good opportunity. Because this is one of the really major way to help Taiwan to be seen by the world. So I think how to link those artists, actor, actress with other countries, producers, or that is something we need to continue to do, and probably we need to make use of this international the streaming system.
Thank you for the question. So I do believe that we should, our diplomacy should have a comprehensive strategy, because we rarely see there's any kind of reports or comprehensive strategy of our national security or our diplomacy team. So just not like other countries, we will see a white paper of the country's diplomacy, or white paper of the national security policy, something like that. We rarely see it from our government. So our government should maybe do a better job of relocating the resources. So the non-Western or non-advanced democracies should be emphasis right now. And for China, I think Taiwan is a very good place, or very good actor that can tell a China story, because we understand China very well. And for that is also related to the last question, that I've met with a lot of researchers from Nordic countries and also East European countries. Some of the scholars complain that there's very few people doing research about China in their country, but they are very eager to know how China uses the informational warfare, economic, diplomatic threats to their countries, and they are eager to cooperate with Taiwan to see how to respond to China's threat. because they are now understanding the threat is very real because of Russians. They can see that there's a dictators with a big country, a powerful tools to threaten other countries. So they want to do more research. But for example, I met with one scholar from, I think it's Norway, and he said that there's only about 3 to 5 people in the think tanks in their own whole country that study China. So these 3 or 5 people have to show up in every place when there's anything about China. So there's only 3 to 5 people in the think tanks. Okay, so I think Taiwan, there's an opportunity for Taiwan that we can help them, we can establish some of the cooperation plan for the think tanks or in academias, because we have a lot of people studying China, right? And we should, every country should study China more, because in the past few years, as the Americans retreat or neglect the power of the international organizations, China has taken control of most of the international nations. For example, do you know that I like this example very well. So the definition of human rights right now in the United Nations is defined by China, okay? Because they are in the Human Rights Committee, and then they redefine human rights as development. That is, under the name of development, economic development, a country can do everything they want. So human rights is no longer defined as a protection of the civil liberty or our individual's liberty. Because China and other countries like Iran, Russia, and North Korea in the Human Rights Committee just changed that, okay? Because, well, advanced democracy neglects the power of the international organizations. And for China, I think we should understand that no matter what the US do or other countries do, it will not change their mind and it will not change their ambition on Taiwan. Because they already say this. They already write this in their constitution. And Xi Jinping has already ordered that PLA, the army, be ready by 2027. That is by Xi Jinping. So he has this order. So, I mean, ready is not meaning that they will use the force, but, well, that is their order, that's their plan. So we should understand it. We should plan for that. For the third question is about the social traffic and inequality and the social problem. We do have a lot of research to confirm this. That is, when people perceive that the inequality is high, their determinants of self-defense is lower, because it's very easy to understand, because you do not have a better sense of community. So we firstly have to commit to build up this country, and we should value the community, the shared values, and then we have the self-defense determinant. However, if you see there's a lot of social problems like inequality, injustice, a lot of problems, then you will not commit to defense. So yeah, that is directly, I mean, the causal mechanism is very clear there. So our government should do a better job on address this. Particularly if the government cannot solve the problem of the housing price, the government should be very honest and to have a better job of communication with citizens. I think Mr. Trump has done a very good job of communication. We have to admit that. Even though he does not, or he does, I mean, no matter he solved the problem or not, he shows the will. He shows the will to listen to people. He shows the will that he can understand people, no matter it's true or not, okay? He shows this. I mean, if you take a study or research about how Trump communicates with the voters, and especially in the every campaigns, he always reiterates this. He said hundreds of times that, okay, I understand you, I can solve this, I know the problem is something, okay? So maybe the government should address the problem to let people know that, okay, the government understands what is the problem, and then to solve it step by step. But sometimes you see the politicians, especially the bureaucrats, will say something very vague. Okay, I know this, you know the bureaucrats, right? So that will cause an even larger problem. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think both Fang Yu and Jasmine laid it out very well. I think I only have one thing to add, which is, for the past few years, Taiwan has really, as a form of diplomacy, really emphasized its advantages in the semiconductor supply chain and technology, which is good. This is one of Taiwan's strengths. But I think there is a real opportunity to look at other aspects. Just to give an example, the Pacific Islands, they care a lot about climate, and for a long time, the U.S. is really, across administrations, has really not invested enough in, the Pacific Islands and really taken their concerns very seriously. And, as a result, China is able to step in, wherever the United States needs a power vacuum, whether it be in regions or international organizations like, as Fang mentioned, the UN Human Rights Council, there will be someone else who can fill in that space. And so, we'll see more of that in the next 4 years. I think Taiwan can think a little bit more about what other fields it can play in, what other partners will allow Taiwan, will be able to give Taiwan, greater partnerships, and it's not just about technology, perhaps in humanitarian assistance or, a lot of other fields out there that a lot of countries are concerned about. And if Taiwan cannot compete with China economically, it should still be able to show that it is willing and sincere to tackle some of the problems that, smaller countries might be really concerned about. Yeah, and so that's all I have to add to that.
So maybe we can have a last round of questions. Any takers? We can wrap. Or if not, we can just wrap. Okay, so quick. Let's keep it quick. It is getting a bit late.
So I'm in journalism. I'm from CNA. So I have a question for you. So there are some people in Taiwan. They are against China. They are against the CCP, but they think Trump is a better choice. So they are pundits from the TVB side. They're critical of Kamala Harris this time. So they're not like Zhao Xiaokang. They're from the KMT. They are not skeptical of America. They support America, but they think Trump's better. They were like YouTubers like Shitan, like you are more, here we are more critical of Trump, but they are very supportive of Trump. How do you see those people? And there are people from China, so they're obviously Chinese. So they use symbol for Chinese. And they're against Democrats because they think Democrats couldn't secure the border. And they think Democrats are for communism. And think Trump administration is a better choice. How do you see those people? And even on like a lot of TV pundits, they think Trump's better. How do you see those people? Thank you. That's my question.
Yeah, I had a question about like what options does Taiwan have for pushback against Trump? Because a lot of what has been mentioned today is it feels like Taiwan trying to play by Trump's rules, where Trump sounds very fickle. So like the Barbie example, it's like whatever you do, it's never going to be good enough. So whatever Taiwan may do in the future to try to appease Trump may never be enough. So does Taiwan have any room to push back against whatever Trump demands of Taiwan or whatever he wants to see of Taiwan, and like maybe kind of educate Trump in like a bigger scheme and like try to play along with like more international rules and not just do whatever he wants to do. So that's kind of the question, and then to maybe slightly related, like the question of U.S. skepticism, which I think is is fair for any country to be. But then in terms of when the KMT raises the skepticism issue, their alternative is very clearly like China, but then like how can you be skeptic of the US and then raise China as an alternative, because China is very, very clearly also does not have very good intentions with Taiwan. So it's kind of, yeah, my question is mainly about those things. Thanks.
So I'll pick up the Trump fans supporters question and the last one. So it's very easy to answer the last one because the KMT politician or some of the supporters, their identity is more likely toward China. So they tend to perceive themselves as Chinese. So the identity problem still plays a very important role in Taiwan's party politics. So you see that the KMT officially adopts the One China principle, which means that Taiwan is part of China. They admit this, they recognize this, but they still illusionary think that China is still part of China or something like that. But they do not oppose that they are part of the whole China someday. So this is a core value of their national identity. Their national identity is still in the China side. So that is maybe one of our problem right now. For the Trump supporters, I think our organization is just the expert to answer this, because 4 years ago we are just attacked by a lot of Trump supporters because it seems like we are not clearly supporting Trump 4 years ago. Well, 4 years ago in the survey globally, Taiwan is has the highest support rate of Mr. Trump, highest. Yeah, because it's easy because the Trump administration is highly pro-Taiwan. Well, Mr. Trump is very different from Trump administration, but most of Taiwanese people cannot tell that. So I write an article saying that it is 距离造成的美感 because of distance makes Trump as a beauty. I mean, well, it's not a good translation, but you understand what I mean. So most Taiwanese people do not understand there's controversies in domestic politics. No, we don't understand about the conservative issues, abortion issues, gun rights issues. A lot of issues we just don't know. Okay, so that's why, because we see a lot of pro-Taiwan and anti-China officials in the Trump administration will say, okay, we support Trump. But 4 years later, this year, according to the political scientists, there's a survey, 55%, 2 days before the elections, 55% of people in Taiwan support Democrats, Harris, okay, 55, and 15% support Trump. So it's again very clear that because the Biden administration is highly pro-Taiwan, so Taiwanese people again support the Democrats. So it's very easy. So yeah, but what you mentioned is some of the crazy people online, because the social media, they will enlarge their voice. So there are a lot of, well, I don't know how big is this size, but a lot of extreme Trump supporters. Those people are inspired by what we call as a toxic masculinity because they are highly conservatives. So you will see that they are anti-LGBTQ. So sometimes, in the domestic parties, they will blame the human rights issues or the LGBTQ issues that caused the loss of the election for DPP, because they think, oh, it's DPP that promotes these LGBTQ issues, the progressive issues, and nobody likes DPP because of this issue. These people, the Trump supporters, just happen to be the core or extreme conservative supporters. The number of these people may not be, well, not many of them, but their voice is very big, especially online. So you can say that, okay, so these people happen to be highly anti-China, but well, they also support Trump because they also support the conservative or anti-progressive agendas. Yeah.
And for the question how to push back with Trump administrations, And I would say after Abian's administration in Taiwan back in 2002 to 2008, 2000 to 2008, Taiwan had learned a very important lesson that when we're trying to counterback US, we need to do that strategically. Otherwise, we're going to lose our friends, and it's gonna be a very tragic result for Taiwan. So I think Taiwan have learned that, and as well as Light administration and Tsai administrations. And so when we're pushing back, we are like gently pushing back. And also for Trump, we understand that he cares about his face so much. He wants to like be that strong man all the time. So we have to save face for him. But there's one question I've been asking, I think it's really, really important for Taiwan to ask ourselves as well, is when China really invade Taiwan, who is going to be the commander, the US commander or Taiwan commander? Who understands Taiwan military better? The US military DOD or Taiwan's military of defense, Ministry of Defense. So I think that person should be Taiwan. That should be a Taiwan person to do the command, and then to so I think it's really, really important. So that's the reason why Fang Yu and a lot of experts have been writing when US continues saying that we need to adopt this kind of asymmetrical warfare strategies. Like we also need to counter with that kind of narratives, and to elaborate why we need to have like bigger, larger military how does it spendings or
different strategies.
yeah, we need to have another strategy. So I think it's really important we need to join that conversation and to diversify that conversation and to continually having different kind of views, and that's what we learned from the Abian administration, that we need to gently, strategically doing that.
Okay. Also, I know you have to go soon.
Oh yeah. So I think one thing I would add is the United States and Taiwan really face different threat environments, and as any country would pursue its own national interests. So ahead of us appears to be this like big change of another Trump administration. What is he gonna do? But regardless of administration, the United States will still pursue its own national interests. And one of the reasons the U.S. is pushing Taiwan, as Jasmine mentioned, an asymmetric strategy, is because it sees the invasion scenario as the most threatening for U.S. interests. Like it doesn't care too much about the gray zone coercion, the lawfare that China is pursuing against Taiwan, its incursions of Taiwan's ADIZ. That's like not as threatening to the United States, even for the Biden administration. And so for Taiwan, it needs these conventional platforms to really push back against China's salami tactics. But for the United States, regardless of who's in power, the most threatening, scenario is, either a blockade, I guess, or an invasion. And so you see a lot of war games, is prepared for that. And so really, circling back to what Fang Yu is saying, and Jasmine mentioned too, Taiwan needs to be able to, and I think it knows that to pursue its own strategy, regardless of who's in power. And I think Taiwan has successfully, followed its own path, while carefully, still being a good partner to the United States. Taiwan, in the Tsai administration, they've talked about the asymmetric strategy, but it is still it sees it as an option, but not what the United States wants Taiwan to do, which is to completely adopt it. And so I think in like small secret ways, Taiwan pursues its own national interests too, and we can be confident that Taiwanese leaders, to the extent that they're able to do what they want to do, will still pursue Taiwanese interests. And yeah, I think there will still be some continuity in terms of defense, in terms of foreign policy in the next 4 years, coming from the United States. And as much a problem in terms of uncertainty that Trump can cause, I think we can still be somewhat optimistic that Taiwan will still pursue its own objectives regardless of American pressure, as long as it kind of treads carefully. And the United States, like one person isn't going to change the entire Department of Defense. There will still be continuity. The foreign policy establishment isn't going to change overnight. And so, yeah, I think we can still be optimistic in some ways that Taiwan will be able to navigate this situation well.
All right, so maybe give a hand to the panelists. If you want to check out their website, it's US-Taiwan-Watch. So we'll stay open for a while if you want to buy a drink to help support, and if you could bring your glasses upstairs. So we'll stay open for a while if you want to get a drink or talk and so forth. So thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thank you.
We're getting nice, so it's we're all guys coming yeah, there's people from the dorms. Yeah. The most of us are living at the dorms. Let's see if they have